Hi everyone, this is Farmer Neek from PV School Gardens, and today we're going to be learning about the early settlers and the gardens that they had in that time. I know from last year that you guys know the Native Americans were here far before the first European settlers arrived to California. And I know that you guys are pretty aware of their lifestyle, right? Their lifestyle is a lot different than the Europeans. You know that they were hunters and gatherers, and you know that they moved a lot. They moved depending on the seasons, because depending on the seasons, that's where bison would also, right? They would migrate from place to place. The bison were looking for food, for vegetation, and the Native Americans, they were following the bison because they wanted meat. So that is our little Native American review. Now I want to move on and talk about the kinds of plants that the Native Americans grew, or more, they foraged, right? They foraged. So some native plants to the Americas are corn, squash or pumpkins, tomatoes, some varieties of beans are native to the Americas, lots of medicinal stuff too. So in the bottom part right here, I named a few medicinal plants that are native to the Americas. So we have calendula, we have chamomile, we have garlic. So the natives, they were mostly foraging this stuff from the wild, right? They're foragers. That means they went into the wild and they just picked whatever nature gave them. They did have some agricultural techniques. That means that they did kind of save some seeds and they planted it once in a while if they knew that they really liked that plant, and they would make sure to give it some extra water to make sure they get that food source. But for the most part, they just foraged and that's how they lived. Okay, so when the Europeans came, they brought in a whole different kind of lifestyle and also different kinds of plants that mixed into with what the natives had brought. So the Europeans, they brought plants like carrots, right? So fava beans, leeks, onions, things that we have all the time, cabbage, and then some varieties of beans like the lima, and I already said the fava, and then also mustard greens, like the ones that cover our hillsides right now. All those yellow flowers, those are mustard greens. So that was probably brought over by a European. And they also brought herbs like rosemary and thyme and lavender. So that's what they brought in. And so, as you guys know, when the Europeans came, it wasn't all peace and fun, right? The Native Americans, they experienced a lot of loss, right, of their land, and a lot of conflict with the Europeans. But the Native Americans still taught the Europeans how to live on this land. They taught them what was safe to eat, what was dangerous to eat. They taught them how to hunt. So they did help the Europeans a lot, and the cultures ended up mixing a lot. As you can see by this soup right here, this is called succotash soup. It contained lots of different veggies from both cultures. So we have corn, which is native. We have carrots, which are European, onions, which are European, and then we have beans, which could be either European or native. But yeah, the cultures mixed, and we learned both these cultures learned a lot from each other. So some of the stuff that the natives taught the Europeans was the medicinal, right? I mentioned calendula, I mentioned garlic and chamomile. So let me just share how those are medicinal. So calendula, which we have in some of our gardens, that flower is really good for skin irritation. You can kind of mix it or beat it down into like a paste and then put that on irritated skin and help your skin calm down a little bit. Chamomile, which is for relaxation. A lot of your parents drink that all the time, right? A chamomile tea to relax them, maybe for bed or maybe in the morning to get a good start to their day. And then garlic has been known to be really good for your heart health. So those are secrets that the natives shared with the Europeans. And today we're going to be planting an early settler garden. It's going to be very exciting. But before I get into that, I just want to share one more thing about the Europeans. At the beginning, we talked about how the natives were hunters and gatherers, and they moved right from place to place. They didn't have just one home. They moved to wherever the bison were. The Europeans were almost the complete opposite, right? They lived in permanent settlements. They built homes, and they didn't forage their food for the most part. They had agriculture. They brought agriculture to these to California. So they planted their seeds, and then they grew them and took care of them, and then they harvested at the end. And agriculture doesn't just mean plants, it also means animals. The Europeans brought a lot of animals with them. They brought the cattle and horses and chickens, which they raised, and then they used them for food or for travel, whatever they needed. And yeah, so that is the difference between these two cultures. Let's get started with gardening. Hi everyone, so we are going to be planting our succotash garden. So in the lesson I mentioned the succotash stew, which is a mixture of some veggies that grow native here in the Americas, and then some that were brought over from Europe. So some of those were corn, right? Corn is native. So let's plant that one first. So when you're planting corn, you want to make sure that you are planting them close together, because corn, they grow in a tall stalk and they need the support of other corn around them to kind of keep them up straight. They don't have a really strong root system. So planting them close together helps them stabilize so they can stand up straight and they won't fall over with all this wind. As you guys can see right now, it's windy, so that'll help them out. And also it's necessary for pollination. Corn has these strands. They don't have flowers, but they kind of have these like strands that grow at the top, and that's how they pollinate. So those strands need to be kind of they're almost like hairs. They need to be touching each other. So corn needs to be planted close together for that reason as well. So I'm gonna plant mine about maybe 6 inches apart. Starting right here, I'll put my first one. I'm gonna do about 3 rows. I'm gonna zigzag. So I'll do one there, one here, and then one there. So it's gonna end up kind of being like an X, and I'll just do a pattern X. So you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So they're pretty close in distance, similar distance, and I'll just keep doing that all down the row. Corn is pretty tall, so I recommend planting it north to south. We aren't doing that right here because our bed isn't in that direction, but if you are planting this, I would recommend planting it north to south. That way it doesn't shade all your other plants that you're going to be planting around your corn. Okay, there's my corn. Next I'm going to do the beans. So it's kind of going to be like a 3 sisters thing. If you guys remember 3rd grade, we learned about the 3 sisters, beans, corn, and squash, and how they help each other, right? It's a partnership. Each sister does something different. The corn grows tall for the beans to wrap around it. The beans, they provide nitrogen to the soil that helps the corn and squash, and the squash acts as a living mulch. So I'm going to be planting these beans, these beautiful, they're called Calypso beans. They're really awesome because they kind of look like cow. It has kind of like cow pattern on there. Isn't that beautiful? So gorgeous. When I saw them, I just knew we had to plant them so we can save the seeds next season and have more of these beautiful seeds. You could also cook these up, right? These are edible beans, so you can cook them up and put them in your succotash soup. So that's what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna be planting them kind of in the same pattern as my corn, right? Just alternating. I think they're about like 6 or 8 inches apart. These are bush beans. They can get pretty big. Okay. Beans usually are pretty successful at germinating, but if you want to be extra careful and make sure you get a bean plant, maybe put more than one bean in there to make sure at least one of them germinates. But I just put one because beans are usually pretty good at germinating. Next, I'm gonna do my onions, right? So onions are native to Europe. These are from European origins, and for my onions, all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna draw a line just for visual just so I know where to sprinkle my seeds. I'm not making it deep at all. It's just enough so I can see the line. And then I'm gonna take all my little onion seeds and I'm gonna sprinkle them on that line, making sure I don't get too many in one spot. I wanna keep going down the line to make sure they're kind of spread out. And if too many come up, I can always move some. I can take them out. Onions are pretty good at, when you transplant them, they're pretty good at coming back. So shouldn't be a problem. And then I'll just kind of pat it to make sure it's covered with a little bit of soil, but we don't want too much soil. They're small seeds, so we don't want them to be too deep into our garden beds. Next, I'm gonna do carrots, which is another European plant. See if this says where it's from. So these carrots are also small, tiny seeds. So I'm gonna do something similar to what I did with the onions. I'm just gonna make the line just for a visual. I'm gonna take my seeds and sprinkle them. The reason why we do this is these seeds are so tiny, it doesn't make a lot of sense to make individual holes for them. And also these plants, onions and carrots, they don't get huge like a tomato plant or a corn or squash plant. So it's okay to plant them a little closer together. So same thing, I'm just gonna pat it. And then I am going to make sure that this gets watered. Almost probably every day. Probably is gonna need some water because it's really hot out right now. And I might fertilize it to make sure all these plants are getting lots of fertilizer. Maybe a store-bought one, or maybe from our compost bin. I might bring some of those worm castings in and fertilize the soil so these plants grow nice and strong. But that is it. All I need is some sun and some love, and we should have our little succotash garden very, very soon. Thanks everyone. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at PV School Gardens, and also check out our website, PV School Gardens.